I want to shift gears a little bit, and I want to jump into keto. You're really one of the first guys who kind of got started. You were doing keto before keto was cool, right? You were one of those first guys. So can you kind of just start off with first telling us how you got it? Like, what kind of got you into keto yourself, and when did that happen?
Yeah, so at that same time I was digging into supplements and all these magazines and nutrition books. There was 2 books that really changed my path. And one guy, Dan Duchesne, was a writer for Muscle Media 2000, which was Bill Phillips, EAS, all that kind of stuff. So like I told you, I love creatine, and I was also reading this guy who's an author in there. And he had a book called Body Opus, and it was about bodybuilders getting shredded for contests on a high-fat diet. And at the time, that was like everyone was eating like rice and tilapia and broccoli and going super, super, super low fat, right? And he's like on this opposite thing. And I was reading this book like, whoa, like this is crazy. Like, and I started experimenting with it. And then this other guy, Lyle McDonald, had this ketogenic diet for the practitioner. Mm-hmm. And, I was working on my RD, and again, I thought it was fascinating because he talked about it related to epilepsy and then weight loss and, with metabolic disease. That was way before like cancer and Alzheimer's and some of these things we know now. But again, I was like, okay, like I'm going to start playing with this and just seeing crazy results. Now, at that time, like 20 years ago when I was using it, I'd kind of use it like here, like on and off, because it was just hard for me to maintain sometimes. Like it worked extremely well. Like I could just strip off like 5 pounds of fat a week and get stronger. But, I'd be on for like 2 months, 3 months, and it's like I get burnt out on, I was a guy too, like, I was like busy, like, eggs and heavy cream and bacon and sausage and cheese. And I was just like, that's all I was eating. But, obviously now it's completely different when you can have waffles and biscuits and snacks. And like, people don't know how awesome it is right now. Like, because there's just snacks aplenty. There's pre-made stuff. There's, Nui/keto cookie. There's all these cool things that you have now for options that are amazing recipe sites like ketogenic.com has, and just so many resources. But yeah, that's where it all started for me. And it was just like, I thought it was like people like within 1 week would be like, what are you doing? Like like it just blew their mind. Like, how are you like so much leaner in 1 week? And I'd like tell them, oh, it's ketogenic diet. They're like, what is that? But it's funny now, like when I talk about it, people are, oh, ketogenic diet, keto? Yeah, I hear about that all the time. Back then, no one heard of it. But yeah, it's always been a passion for mine. And definitely, I was always like anti-low fat. Like that never made sense to me. So yes, it definitely worked.
And, for me, I think I didn't even really know what eating amazing keto foods were until I came to visit you probably the first time in Dallas. And Shelly is the most amazing cook ever. Like I need you guys to start posting more of your foods. Like every time I go to Dallas to visit Shawn, like I remember when I was there for Easter, and I was there for
chicken cordon bleu.
Chicken cordon bleu. The first time I ever had a keto cinnamon bun, and like I literally was like, I don't need Cinnabon ever again in my life, ever again. And I'm amazed. And all it takes is she's not someone that comes from a diverse, crazy background of knowing food. She looks online, she adapts her own recipes based on some stuff she reads online, and she makes it, and she plays around with it and does it. Like that's how simple it is in the grand scheme of things. It's amazing, and I love that.
Yeah, waffles, biscuits, chicken fingers, all these things. Like now it's like you don't have to live without anything. I mean, it's amazing, all these recipes. Yeah, for sure.
I love it. So what is let's tell everyone, what's a typical day look like in Shawn Wells' life? What's a typical eating day?
Well, right now, I actually have been experimenting more and more with fasting. Over the last 2 years, I've been playing with intermittent fasting. But lately, and I'll say this, like when I started experimenting with intermittent fasting, I wanted to also play around with being on keto or not being on keto. And so I started playing with just low carb and fasting. And I actually saw that low carb and fasting got me deeper into ketosis than just a nutritional ketogenic diet. And I think most people, there's a lot of people that are playing around with net carbs and, you know, maybe don't have their carbs low enough and not eating enough fat and eating a ton of protein and thinking like, keto's cool and I'm losing weight, but I'm not like feeling like this amazing cognitive clarity and I'm not getting like this really suppressed appetite and like some of the magic of keto. And I really feel like it's those things like your fat isn't high enough, that your actual carbs aren't low enough because you're playing with net carbs, and you're probably not doing fasting. And fasting is just so powerful. So now I'm doing keto and fasting. And I'm doing, actually lately, I'm playing around with, I went past 16 and 8, and then I was at 18 and 6, and I was at 20 and 4. Right now I'm playing with every other day fasting.
Interesting.
And and it's amazing. Like literally, again, like in 1 week, people are like, what are you doing? It's just insane. Like the results you can get so quickly. But, you know, one of the things that I care deeply about is the autophagy benefits beyond like body composition and things like that.
Could you explain autophagy real quick?
Yeah, it's a cellular cleanup, that detox that happens. And, you know, I really think of us like a battery. And if you're constantly metabolizing, like consuming, breaking it down, digesting, absorbing, excreting, then you can't do that like we were told, like 6 to 8 times a day, all day, every day, and have time for this cellular detox, right? So it's really important. We've seen, okay, there's anti-aging benefits with not eating, essentially with calorie restriction, CR, and there's anti-aging benefits with keto. There's anti-aging benefits with intermittent fasting or time-restricted feeding. And okay, like what's the, you know, commonality here? Like 1, we're getting our ketones up. 2, we're giving our body a break from metabolism. And so I think if you go down that path, then that's where like all these anti-aging benefits happen. And not only are you getting like the autophagy, or even now the new term is like the newer, hotter term is mitophagy, with mitochondria doing the cleanup, which we know mitochondria are just key to this whole thing with aging and how we feel energetically, the cellular powerhouse, right? I mean, that's where like all this happens. And we know mitochondrial dysfunction is tied to every chronic disease.
Right.
Everything. It tracks back to everything. And we've talked about how, you know, there is glucose intolerance, but there really isn't like a ketone intolerance. So that's where like it's cool. Like if you're one of those people that, you know, 25% of the population that does great with carbs, and if it fits your macros, and I, you know, hit my calories and, you know, whatever, like calories in, calories out. Cool, man. Like that's awesome. Like you're probably someone who's super fit and you've always like had great insulin tolerance and, you know, super good with carbs. That's great. And you're probably active. But there's this other 70% of the population that is fighting obesity for a number of reasons. You know, because of the ultra-processed food, because of how addictive they are, because we're maybe too sedentary, because of genetics, because of a lot of factors, but it's real. And as we're aging and we're getting more glucose intolerant, then we're running into mitochondrial dysfunction, we're running into insufficient cellular energy, then we're running into chronic inflammation, then we're running into glycation, which is blood sugar damage, and then boom, chronic disease. All of it. So people say like, you know, oh, you know, people are making keto out to be like some miracle thing. Well, for 70% of the people, it really is. They get all this energy back and they're like, whoa, where'd this energy come from? And then yes, like it really attacks like almost every disease state. It's not like overblown. It's not this crazy thing. Like it really is that effective. It's especially if you're one of these people that puts on fat easily and doesn't deal with carbs that well.
100%. And I think you hit the nail on the head with two of the key factors, and they're interrelated to some capacity. Is managing blood glucose levels and insulin to that factor is extremely important for longevity and chronic disease. And then mitochondrial function. I think so often it's so tough to quantify unless you're like inside. You don't know. You can't really like take a blood measure and go, oh, my mitochondria aren't functioning well. It's oftentimes, unfortunately, it's too late by the time you understand that. And one of the aspects that I know we're both super passionate about is the neurodegenerative diseases, like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, traumatic brain injury. And a lot of that stems from not solely, but a large part, your brain's inability to utilize glucose. Like you call Alzheimer's type 3 diabetes. Like your brain isn't able to take up and utilize a fuel source, and we're still continuing to try and pound it in with insulin and high carb diets, and it's just becoming more and more resistant. And so that's one of the things that I think is amazing that you're kind of help spearheading as well, is this movement towards neurodegenerative diseases. One of the approaches that you've incorporated in, I know you're people, if they can't see you or if they've never met you, like you're a super fit guy. Like I know he literally gets after it with at the gym. Like you would kick my butt in the gym any day of the week. You're killing it. And one of the things that you do is you play volleyball as well, or getting back into it, because I know you had some knee surgeries, but getting back into volleyball, and you've done like for a long time, you've done like a cyclical approach. Do you still do that? And kind of talk a little bit about that, because I think some people, it's more of like a targeted approach because you're doing it right around your workout. But some people get confused and they're like, hey, I just want to have pizza and donuts every single weekend, whereas you're more of like, hey, I'm going to incorporate in some of these foods while I'm playing volleyball and burning thousands of calories playing volleyball all day. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, one of the keys, Ryan, I think is like, if this truly is a lifestyle, and maybe if you're not in a disease state, then don't beat yourself up. Let's not like get into like sucralose versus stevia. Let's not get into like if you're having gluconeogenesis. Let's not get into like, am I like slightly in or slightly out? Or, I mean, as long as you're on your path and you're maintaining this lifestyle long term, and it's not some crash thing that you're going to like be in and out of, like literally like, oh, I'm back to just crushing carbs, for months, then don't beat yourself up. Find ways to be happy with it and incorporate it into your lifestyle. And so for me, I love the ketogenic lifestyle. I love the foods like we were just talking about, but occasionally I want some of these other things that are like still comfort foods, these desserts or, like sugar and candy and whatnot. And so instead of beating myself up about it and saying like, oh my gosh, like I can't have that, or like feeling all or nothing, if I have something, like I might as well just give up the diet. I just plan it. It's just, carbs aren't essential, but they're essential to me as a tool. And so I just use like cyclically, I have like, maybe one meal a week. I have just whatever I want. And we've talked about this. Like if somebody's eating McDonald's like year round and they have like one salad, it's not going to like change them. So the same thing, like my one out of my whatever meals a week isn't going to be a big factor. It's a blip. And same thing, like when I play volleyball, if I play competitive sand volleyball, on Saturdays I'll play for 8 hours in the Dallas heat, and it's very dynamic. It's 4, sometimes it's 2s. And I'm just literally, like you said, expending thousands of calories, and you're playing 8 hours. So like the first 2-3 hours, I'll have, really simple carbs. And instead of like consuming some kind of powder like maltodextrin, I'm going to have something I enjoy. And I get the benefit of, I really feel like dual fuel, like where I'm like, using ketones, but I'm also using glucose. And I feel like I'm on fire and it's just a really good feeling. So like I use, Gatorade or, candy, like, I don't know, gummy worms or, something like that. And I enjoy it. And I'm like, cool, like these are like things now I'm not missing. But like the cool thing is by the end of that volleyball session, like at night, I'm already back in ketosis. And like people might think that's crazy, but like once you become deeply ketogenically adapted, that's your like homeostatic state.
Right.
Whereas most people are so glucogenically adapted that, it's a fight for them. But for me, it's just like I'm back to who I am. I'm back to where I am. And it's quick. That's where like some of these studies, and this, like it's really essential to have ketogenic adaptation. And you guys have done that and brought a lot of light to that. And that's something I deeply appreciate because it's so frustrating, like to look at studies where they show up, performance drops off. Like, well, did it? Because like these guys have been eating for 20, 30 years, like, glucogenically. And here's the thing too, right? If we were to go back, we've talked about this, like back in the past, like, before food preparation and storage and all that kind of stuff, we would have been ketogenic so much of the time. Like people are talking about it like, oh, it's this crazy diet people are on, this crazy fad diet. Half the time, at least, any population I feel like would have been in ketosis because we wouldn't have been fasting. We would have been starving, looking for food. We would have been eating animals, which are ketogenic during the winter at least. And even the carbs would have been resistant starches. Right. Like if we're eating a potato, like you can eat a potato raw on a ketogenic diet and it's healthy for you and you'll stay in ketosis. Like, I don't know, like people understand, like I think there needs to be a lot more research on resistant starches, but it's fascinating. But so many of these things in their raw state are resistant starches. It's, again, the ultra processing that turns them into basically high glycemic sugar.
Right. And I think that's an important piece as well is without going too much into it, it's like these resistant starches, a lot of times people go, oh, like just 4 grams of carbs is the same as 4 grams of carbs. It doesn't matter where it's coming from. Well, it's like if I give you 4 grams of straight sugar, 4 grams of carbs from chips, and then I give you 4 grams of carbs from a resistant starch, the metabolic impact is going to be vastly different. And how your glucose and insulin spike are going to be vastly different. Like there's a lot of things that people just go, oh, isn't just 20 grams of carbs 20 grams of carbs? It's like, no, they're not. How they are metabolically processed is vastly different. I think that's a really important piece that you touched on.
Oh, that's that whole, like, if it fits your macros madness. Like,
right.
That, like, oh, like, same with fat. Like, if I give you canola oil or trans fat, oh, that's the same as me giving you coconut oil? No. It's like if I give you whey protein and I give you, like, some, garbage, like, wheat protein or something, is that the same? No. Where is this coming from? Like,
I don't know, man.
Silly.
It is. It really is. What, if you had to give advice to someone just starting out, to truly starting out, they want to get embarked on this lifestyle, what are some quick tips that you would give them to get started?
On the keto lifestyle?
Yep.
Really the thing I love about keto is just embrace the empowerment that it brings. In that once you get good at making these decisions, like when you're sitting at that table and you say, no, I don't want the chips, I don't want the bread on the table, I don't want the sweet tea or the soda that everyone else is having, I'm good. Like embrace that and realize how special that is for you. Not only will you start making positive decisions for your diet, this is going to have an impact throughout your life. Like, to me, keto can be transformative for your life because now you're taking that power back. You're saying, I don't want to eat what everyone else is eating. I'm going to make decisions that are healthy for me. I'm not going to do what the crowd is doing. And that is a powerful thing. That will help you pursue your passion like we were talking about, right? Like help you pursue that life path that you're talking about. So that's one of the things that, like, keep in mind, like, how awesome you are for doing this diet, and then stop thinking about diet and start thinking about lifestyle and what will it take for me to maintain this forever.
Right.
Forever. And so don't beat yourself up. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, it's so key. Like, like, it's cool. Like 1 year in, 2 year in, whatever. Once you start tweaking and you've really maintained it, say, you know what, I'm going to cut out sucralose and, just do stevia. And, I'm going to just go paleo now. And, I'm going to add in some intermittent fasting. But don't try and say I'm going to go paleo, intermittent fasting, keto, and have no sucralose. And, it's like, that's not maintainable, from the start. Just as you go, add things. But, and I honestly think the best place to start for everyone is to just reduce the sugar, reduce the ultra processed foods, and go a little bit more whole food. Start there, because there's a chance that when you start out with keto and you're really sugar addicted, that you're going to be fighting this and all you'll be making is keto desserts. You started this way with all your whipped cream stuff that you're eating, right? It's hard, when you're addicted to sweets, to really be effective with ketosis, because you'll just be trying to do keto desserts all the time. So that's right. I think it's really powerful to start there, with whole food, and then work your way into keto.
I couldn't agree more, man. And I think we're starting to see a lot of the paleo movement now, paleo's blending with keto, because it's we were right there. We just had to cut out a couple things. And I think that's one of the amazing things, because a lot of people have heard of paleo at this point. I think a lot of people have heard of keto at this point. But if you go paleo and then kind of work your way into keto, it's an easier it's very easy for people to transition into that. The last question I want to ask for this segment is this. What are you most excited about with this conversation? The other day I just saw, you're seeing these celebrities come out of the woodworks, right? You're seeing Halle Berry just talked about how she's incorporating been on a ketogenic diet with her she had type 1 and type 2 diabetes, how she's been incorporating it in, and it's been helping her, all of these different research applications for cancer, neurological diseases. What excites you the most about how far we've come and where we're going with this conversation?
Yeah, and for me personally, there's a lot of power here, because I have a lot of autoimmune conditions. I have Hashimoto's with my thyroid. I have a pituitary adenoma, which has wreaked havoc for me in terms of my hormones, neurotransmitters, sleep, everything. And, I have chronic fatigue syndrome and fibromyalgia related to having mono once Epstein-Barr virus. And so I'm fighting a lot of these things. And I have a high likelihood, even though my brain tumor is benign, and I say that loosely because it's definitely affected me in many ways, but it's non-cancerous, it can become cancerous. So I have all these autoimmune things. I have the potential for cancer. And when I look at these things, what you're talking about with Halle Berry, a lot of that is correlated to autoimmunity. And a lot of the people are feeling, again, because of that insufficient cellular energy with autoimmunity, they're experiencing whoa, I feel amazingly better. It's not just people that were obese or insulin resistant that are feeling this. It's a lot of the autoimmunity community that is experiencing a lot of these benefits, and they're getting energy that they never had. And it's the same with me. And I definitely want people to know that there's so much potential here, and I hope there's so much more research to come. And I've told you, one of the most powerful things for me in terms of resolve on me being correct and going down this path is that I was working with a lady that came to me that had cancer, stage 4 glioblastoma multiforme, and she was given 6 weeks to live. And they took her off chemo and radiation. And she said, Shawn, what can I do? And I put her on everything I know to do with cancer that has research. Hyperbaric oxygen chamber, IV vitamin C. I put her on mitochondrial supplements, PQQ, CoQ10. Put her on the ketogenic diet, and then intermittent fasting. 6 weeks later, I get this text from her, 80 to 90% reduction in my brain tumor. Thank you so much, Shawn. And I wrote her back on this text. And I said, did anyone tell you about the ketogenic diet? She said, no one but you. And I was like, really? You know, like, not even when, like, the drug money was taken off the table and you were just at death's door, no one said, hey, you know what? I got this thing I heard about. It's this wacky diet, and, you know, you're at death's door. You're going to die anyway. So if you want to try this thing, maybe you should look into it. No one even said that. No one said anything. And that really pisses me off to know that, I mean, we've seen what, like, you know, keto and cancer can do with, you know, the Keto Pet Sanctuary and Epigenics and a lot of the things that Victoria has worked with. But it's so powerful and has so much potential. And there's data with at least being an adjuvant therapy with chemo and radiation and, like, improving their outcomes. But, I mean, this is just frustrating to me to know that it can do that. 80 to 90% reduction in 6 weeks. You can't do that. You can't do that with, I mean, this is a death sentence cancer. You can't do that with chemo and radiation. I'm not saying that's typical and it's going to happen all the time. I'm not making claims about anything. I'm just saying this was a single case study that really happened, and that frustrates me.
It frustrates me too, brother. And I think that's why I love what we're doing. I love the mission. That's really why we started this podcast, is to really help get this information out. What we're doing on ketogenic.com is provide tools and resources, because I think that does frustrate me beyond belief that there are people. One of the girls that spearheads our content, she had epilepsy, and for 20 years of her life, no one even thought or recommended a ketogenic diet, and she was resistant. She was drug-resistant epilepsy, and no one ever mentioned it. And it wasn't until she followed a popular blogger, Suzanne Keto Karma, who's an amazing person. She started following her, and she heard about this keto thing and found it through her. And that's why, like, I see and I hear so many stories like this, and I love that you brought that up, because it's such a powerful tool. And it's like, if we don't get this information out, and I try and look at it from a positive perspective. I don't blame MDs for not recommending it. We both went to school with them, and they're worried about cutting in certain areas of the brain or working on this bone. They get this much nutrition information, and they're focusing on people every single day. They don't have time to stay up to date with the latest research. So that's why I look at us and I say, this is our obligation. Like, it's our obligation to help educate them. And then if they're open-minded to it, which I've seen a ton of medical doctors go, you know what? That's interesting. You know what? Let me look more into that. Because a lot of times patients will look to their medical doctor for that guidance. And so,
agreed.
I love that. I absolutely love that.